Hello and welcome. My name's Perrin Desports. I'm one of the founders at Tusk Partners, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. This is part 3 of our two-part webinar series on DSO fundamentals for the dental industry professional. In this webinar, we're going to focus more on sales and marketing strategies and how, as sales and marketing people, we interact and deal with the emerging market DSOs. By now, you've probably already seen the first 2 webinars in the series. If you haven't, or if you would like to go back and watch them again at any point in the future, you can access them off of our website, tusk-partners.com, or simply email any of the partners at Tusk, and we'll send you a direct link to do so. As a friendly reminder, you should be getting an email from me about right now. I recommend that you pause the video recording here, download the email, and take a look for the link to download the entire slide deck of everything we're about to cover. I recommend that you print it. That way you can write questions, notes, comments, anything in the margin that you'd like to follow up on, or anything that I may say that you think is valuable that's not necessarily pre-printed. As I said before, this is the part 3 of a 2-part webinar series. We're going to focus more on sales and marketing strategies today. But the entire series is broken down into 30-minute increments to make them all more easily digestible for the viewer. This is obviously a video of the webinar series, but I still encourage you to ask questions. Feel free to email any of us with any question you've got related to the content in this webinar, or if you've got questions related to anything in the entire DSO industry. If you're part of a group, sales team, branch office, or company and would like to have a dedicated follow-up webinar or conference call, we'd welcome the opportunity to do that. Our contact information will be forthcoming. The first 2 webinars in the series focused on dental industry trends and DSO fundamentals. As I indicated before, this one focuses more on how to interact with the DSO owners in terms of sales and marketing strategies. It's really a webinar geared more towards the sales professional, marketing professional, and business leader or executive in a sales capacity. I'll start by giving you a quick overview of exactly who we are and what we do so you'll understand a bit more about our background. That's me in the middle. I'm Perrin Desports, and those are my 2 partners, Diwakar Sinha and Kevin Cumbus. Kevin got his start in investment banking with Wachovia Securities. After business school, he spent 4 years with the McGill Hill Group here in Charlotte, North Carolina, focused on practice transitions and valuation. After leaving the McGill Hill Group, he did 4 years with Affordable Care Incorporated in their DSO operations and roll-up strategy. Diwakar is the banker in the group. He spent the last 15 years of his working career lending money to dentists all over the United States. Most recently, he was Vice President of Sales for East West Bank out of Pasadena. East West was the preeminent lender in the DSO, in the emerging market DSO space of dentistry. And I've got 15 years of distribution experience, having run 3 different operations for Patterson Dental Company. There are 2 facets of our business here at Tusk. The first is an online brokerage website. Think Zillow.com meets dental practice brokerage. Until now, if you wanted to sell your dental practice, you basically had 2 options. You can pay a broker 10% to sell your practice, or you can go it alone and do it in a for sale by owner model, neither of which are a really good value proposition. We leverage modern technology to reduce our costs and pass those savings on to our sellers, and we charge 5% commission to do that. You'll see that our listings feature beautiful professional photographs, informative graphical displays of clinical, financial, and operational successes, and much, much more. We think more engaged buyers hopefully means more offers and potentially a higher selling price for our sellers. It's a wonderful value proposition. You can see more examples of our listings and get further details at tuskbrokerage.com. The second facet of our business, and really what we're going to dive into more tonight, is on the Tusk Partners side of the business. This is focused more squarely on group practices and DSOs, especially those in the emerging market. Think 5 to 25 locations. Your legal structure is critically important, and you need to define it early on in your DSO because it impacts equity and exit considerations as you scale your business. Debt structure is something that not too many emerging market DSOs consider until it's too late. Traditional lenders typically pull back around 4 locations and roughly $2 million in debt exposure. So we help them find alternative sources of capital. You can learn more from our white paper on our website called Debt Financing in the Emerging DSO. We offer buy-side advisory services and sell-side advisory services. Most DSOs will grow through acquisitions, so they frequently come to us and ask them to find targets to acquire. Then we do some quantitative modeling to determine the upside of the acquisition as it fits within their DSO. On the sell-side advisory, this is really more of a go-to-market strategy. It's about a 3 to 6 month process where we prepare the business for sale operationally and financially, trying to show it in its best light. And then we take it to market to find the best partner or acquirer, be it private equity or an enterprise level DSO. To go from small to medium to large takes a little bit of hand holding, and our strategic consulting offering is geared toward that end. Our engagements typically last about 6 to 36 months, and they're designed to help a DSO grow and scale their business to the point of preparing for sale. You can find more information about these services as well at tusk-partners.com. As a quick recap of our first webinar, titled Dental Industry Trends, we talked about the history behind what is the DSO space. We talked also about the emerging market space and how it's come about from a valuation perspective. What's the difference in a single practice versus a group practice in terms of valuation? And then how do you sell group practices or sell a platform thereafter and still make money all along the way? In short, we tried to give a brief overview of just what's gotten everybody so interested in the space. In our second webinar, we tried to focus more on the role of private equity. Who are they? What do they want to do? Why are they in this space? We talked about valuation drivers for a DSO, and we talked about scale and platforms, what both of those terms meant, what the objectives were, and ultimately a little bit about what the exit strategy is. And then we tried to take a look into our crystal ball and give you an idea of what we think is coming over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. And that brings us to webinar number 3, Sales and Marketing, the mindset and strategies to penetrate the space. For those of us who've been in the dental industry in a sales capacity for a number of years, we know that there's been more change in probably the last decade than we've ever seen in our careers, especially from a sales perspective. This space is not easy. It's not easy to access decision makers. It's not easy to get a decision, and to get a deal done is sometimes a monumental undertaking. It can, however, be worth it. It needs, however, to be approached appropriately from a marketing first and sales second strategy. So let's dive right in, and we're going to start with a book that was an ebook that was published by Google back in 2011. The name of that book is called Zero Moment of Truth. And if you look in the upper left of the slide in front of you, you can see here the web link in your PDF to download the ebook from our website. You can feel free to click on that. It'll take you to a landing page and you can download the ebook. It's probably 70 to 80 pages in length. It's filled with lots of graphs and charts and color representations. It's an easy read, and it's flat out alarming. And when you think of the fact that it was written now more than 6 years ago, bells ought to be going off in the back of your head after you're finished reading it. I highly encourage all of you to download the ebook and read it. It'll take you less than an hour, and it'll tell you a tremendous amount about buyer behavior in today's world of e-commerce. Since we don't have time to read the book together, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of it, and I'm going to put it in context of why this is important for today's market. In terms of marketing terminology, first moment of truth is when a buyer is in their environment ready to make a purchase decision. Let's use the example of all of us wandering into a grocery store and standing in the aisle where all the clothes detergents are. There are a million of them over several different shelves in front of us, and we reach for the Tide detergent. That's our first moment of truth. That's where we're making a buying decision. Tide has spent a lot of money advertising on football games and TV shows and over the airwaves and print and everything else to support our buying decision up to that point. We make that decision when we're in the environment. We make the commitment to buy Tide when we're standing in the grocery store. Now let's take another example of you and I buying a large screen TV. If you think back 6 or 8 or 10 years ago, when we went to make a purchase decision and we needed to buy a flat screen TV, what would we do? We'd go to a retailer like a Best Buy or a Circuit City. We'd walk into the store and we'd ask one of the salespeople, I need to buy a flat screen TV. Can you give me some advice or show me what you've got? And they would say, well, do you want plasma or LCD? And we would say, I don't know. What do we want? They would give us some recommendations on why plasma is better for this and why LCD is better for that. We'd make the decision that we wanted an LCD flat screen TV. Great. What size do you want? Well, I'm not really sure. Something between 48 and 60 inches. Well, this size is better to watch this type of media. This is better for this. Okay, it looks like we want a 48-inch LCD TV. And then the salesperson would say, what brand are you looking for? And we would say again, I don't know. What do you have? Well, Sony is this with this type of a warranty, and Samsung is this with this type of a warranty, and LG is that with this type of a warranty. Well, okay, I think I want the Sony 48-inch LCD flat screen television. That was our education process and how we arrived at buying a flat screen TV. Do any of us shop for flat screen TVs like that nowadays? The answer is no. What do? We're sitting on our couch with our iPad or our phone or our laptop open, and we're Google searching flat screen TVs. We do all of the research and differentiate between plasma and LCD off of a site like cnet.com or any of the Popular Mechanics or any of them that rate and review, in this case, electronic purchases, and they tell you the ins and outs of all of them. They tell you price points, they typically compare and contrast warranties. They even have rating systems, 1 star to 5 stars. Owners can leave comments. Would they buy one of these again? Yes or no? We do all of our research from the comfort of our own home with a glass of wine in our hand or a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning in the privacy of our living room. When we go through that entire process and we've educated ourselves completely about what we want to buy, we've also come to a conclusion on the rough price range that we're willing to pay for it. We look online, find those that are priced most appropriately. Do we need installation or not? How can we cover that? Is there a coupon for it? Does Amazon have it, or Walmart or Best Buy or any other retailer? And the final part of the process is we send a text message out to all of our friends, or we post it on Facebook or something and ask for feedback. Has anybody bought a flat screen TV recently? What did you buy? Do you like it? Has it been reliable? Would you buy it again? And all of our friends basically support our buying decision. At that point, we're ready to move forward and make our purchase. That's called zero moment of truth. We talked with a friend, we searched online, we read a review, We did it all from the comfort of our own home with no sales or marketing person present. There's no difference in those of us who are in a professional sales and marketing capacity in the dental industry right now. There's no difference in the way our buyers make buying decisions for the products and goods and services we sell versus your everyday consumer. And all of you who are listening to this webinar are that very same consumer in other aspects of life. The reason that this is important, and the reason I'm spending a few minutes on this slide and trying to tell you what Zero Moment of Truth about, is because half of the buying process starts before the selling cycle begins. And you can see that at the bottom of your page there that I just tried to highlight. Half of that buying process takes place when you and I are not present. We're not around to influence decisions. We're not around to accentuate features and benefits or why we're the best person or best company to go with. Our buyers are making those decisions when we're not present. The other reason that this is an important point right now is because all too often and up to this point in the dental industry, our marketing departments have been responsible for essentially developing pretty brochures or nice tear pads with promotions that accentuate or talk about the features and benefits of the products that we sell. In the dental industry, we still rely on person-to-person selling experiences where the sales rep makes the difference and the marketing component is a brochure that the sales rep brings with them. That's not good enough anymore. We need to be thinking in terms of sales and marketing instead of feet on the street. We need to be thinking about mind share leads to market share. Mind share as a share of the thought of the prospect or customer or buyer leads to our market share being a dominant position. Mind share leads to market share. Now, to further substantiate some of this in terms of buyer behavior and the new selling environment that we all find ourselves in, these are some statistics that we pulled down from a marketing research arm of HubSpot. HubSpot is a CRM application that we use here at Tusk, a marketing automation application that we use here at Tusk. And we think it's very effective for our uses, but they do a lot of studies of the overall industry. You can see in front of you that only 2% of cold calls result in an appointment. That's not unusual, and most of us don't make cold calls in our industry. But the alarming part is that 80% of sales require 5 follow-ups after the initial meeting. Everybody talks about how much longer the selling process is now than it ever has been before. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. Going back to our marketing people, we need to start to understand what a nurtured lead is. A nurtured lead is someone that searches for your product or good or services from the comfort of their own home. They do all of their research, they find all of your information, they read all about it, but your company needs to lead them through that process. And they need to lead them through that process when the sales rep is not present. Nurtured leads produce on average a 20% increase in sales opportunities. Not conclusions, but opportunities. So lead nurturing starts before we even realize that they're a prospect. Nurtured leads also make 47% larger purchases than non-nurtured leads. And the other alarming statistic that you'll hear again in this presentation is that 57% of the buyer's journey is completed before the buyer even talks to a salesperson. More than half goes on when we're not present. So 63% of the people requesting information on your company won't make a purchase for 3 months. And 20% will take more than a year to buy. The selling cycle is truly longer. Customers believe that sales reps are 88% knowledgeable on a product, but only 24% knowledgeable as it relates to business expertise. If there's one piece of advice I can really give you, it's that you have to be a master of your craft. You have to know your customer's business better than they know their business. And if you're focusing all of your educational process on product features and benefits, you're spending time in the wrong area. 82% of buyers viewed at least 5 pieces of content from the winning vendor. Content is that material that's published online, that is accessible whenever a prospect wants to read it, however they want to find it, and it educates them about the product, the good, the service, the process, or whatever it is that you're trying to sell. And then finally, we all too often ignore getting referrals. Only 11% of salespeople ask for them, but customers are 4 times more likely to buy when they're referred by a friend. That's critically important to your success as a sales professional, getting referrals. So the new buying process is really one where the consumer is in charge. They want to pull information when they want it without having it pushed upon them by others. It's a different marketing tact. When they do all of their research and they come to a point where they're ready to buy, they buy with confidence. And what they learn, they share with others. So the Zero Moment of Truth book goes through all of this. And again, it's a reason why I think you all ought to spend some time reading it. It's an easy read and it doesn't take you very long. Again, for today's buying process, more than half of it takes place before the selling cycle even begins. And this graphic basically illustrates that. So let's move now into some strategies to penetrate the emerging market DSO space. If the buyer's already done almost all their research, they really don't need somebody to go over features and benefits. Again, 57% of that journey is completed before the buyer even talks to you. And customers believe that you're 88% knowledgeable on product, but only 24% of you are knowledgeable when it comes to business expertise. Business expertise is what they need the most. Many of you probably read a book called The Challenger Sale. Got a lot of publicity. It came out probably 6 or 8 years ago now, written by Brent Adamson and Matthew Dixon. The central tenets of that book are what they call teach, tailor, and take control. Teach them about their business. Tailor a solution that's unique to you, your company, your product, your good or service, and then take control of the entire process to implement that solution. It's a great book. Again, it's a little bit alarming. You can't download it, but I recommend that you all pick up a copy if you haven't already read it. So winning in today's sales environment comes down to a number of things. One, becoming a better resource, and that starts with questions and a discovery process. Doctor, are you thinking about adding another location? I can guarantee that all of our dentists are thinking about it, regardless of whether they do it or not. Most of them aren't asking you about it. It's your responsibility to ask them, what's your future vision? Are you thinking about expanding your business? Are you going to add another location? And if you're going to add another location, are you going to start up or acquire? What areas of town are you interested in? What's your time frame you think before you're going to pull the trigger and do this? And if you're acquiring a practice, what characteristics are you looking for? What's your target acquisition profile? Target acquisition profile is something we spend a lot of time on at Tusk with our customers. And we go through it pretty extensively to identify the characteristics of the practices they should and should not be buying. Sometimes success is not just acquiring a lot of practices, but it's also born out of not making a bad acquisition. Have the discipline not to buy a practice if it doesn't meet your acquisition profile. And finally, if you do end up acquiring practices, do you want the seller to stay on? How do you plan to source associates? Provider turnover is one of the biggest problems for every DSO. You can play a critical role in that by being a connector and helping them source associates. What kind of runway will your bank allow you? Do you need to consider alternative sources of capital? Most DSO owners don't know this and don't understand it, but your traditional lenders typically tap out around $2 million of debt exposure, and usually that's about 4 locations. Those aren't hard and fast numbers, but they come up rather quickly for somebody trying to scale their DSO by making acquisitions and using bank debt to do it. This is a good conversation for you to have with them to get them to explore this further with their existing banking relationship to determine how far they can go together. Other questions to ask: are you going to allow other doctors to earn equity in your business? Have you considered that before? Do you have good legal counsel for different ownership structures? A group dental practice of 5 different dentists, each who own 20% in the group, is dramatically different than having a formal DSO structure. DSO is Dental Service Organization, and it basically means that you have non-clinical owners in the business. Think of a CFO, a CEO, a COO, or someone like that at a corporate position having ownership in the business but not producing clinical dentistry. Do you have employment agreements in place post-sale as well that are critically important of all your key personnel? Have you thought about your current staff, key leadership role and personnel that you have on the payroll presently, and what's their future viability as the entity scales and grows? Do you need to bring in outside expertise? You're most certain that you will have to bring in outside expertise. It's just a matter of when. And doctor, what's your end game? Do you plan to sell your DSO? And if so, what's your time frame? One thing that we get into a lot at Tusk with our clients is what we call the true cost of quality. This is something that a lot of sales professionals want to talk about, but they're not really sure how to engage. And if they don't make a compelling value proposition, or if the manufacturing company doesn't have a compelling manufacturing proposition, then all too often buying technology and equipment simply comes down to what's the cost of the item. In this example, we show that the ADA average hourly production is $470 per hour. If this doctor in this situation is 57% more productive, they produce about $705 per hour. They work 50 weeks a year and work 32 hours a week. So their practice revenue is a little bit over $1.1 million. They work 1,600 hours total on an annual basis. When it comes to evaluating dental equipment, quality versus cheap chairs from China, as I like to say, has a difference on the impact of the business. And that's typically borne out through operatory downtime. Now, those of us who've been in the dental industry in a sales capacity at least, or manufacturing capacity for that matter, know that any piece of dental equipment is probably going to be reliable for the first year or two. But over the lifespan of that equipment, the cost of quality really shows its mettle. And here we're showing that quality dental equipment in this situation might cost $30,000 to purchase, and cheap dental equipment might be 30% less. It might cost $20,000 to purchase. The quality equipment lasts for 20 years, but the cheap stuff only lasts for 12. And the average operatory downtime for quality dental equipment is a full % less, and that equates to about 16 hours per year on average. So let's go through this mathematical example for a quick second. If you take a look at the difference in purchase price between the two at the point of sale, one is $10,000 less. The cheap chairs are less. The lost revenue on an annual basis is about a little bit over $7,500, meaning there's less downtime with quality equipment than there is with cheap equipment. But in the first year, you're still better off buying a cheap chair. In this situation, the cheap chairs will last about 12 years. And over that period of time, that's going to cost you a lost revenue component of almost $83,000. The net difference over the lifespan of ownership, 12 years, is about $80,000. And then in the 13th year, you probably have to replace the cheap chairs. We're not even taking that into account. This does make a material impact at the point of purchase, comparing cheap stuff to quality stuff. But in the situation of lost productivity, it has a far more dramatic impact, and it's quantifiable. Along the same lines, practices are valued as a multiple of EBITDA. We covered what EBITDA is in a prior webinar. If you've forgotten, I encourage you to go back and review that. But it's basically a measure of normalized profitability. It stands to reason that if you buy cheap equipment that has more downtime, you're not producing as much dentistry. If you're not producing as much dentistry, then you're not creating as much profit. And if you're not creating as much profit, profit is what you're measured on at the point you want to sell your DSO. If there's less profit, there's going to be less proceeds for sale. Let's take a mathematical example again. ADA average hourly production of $470. We generate about $705 out of this practice. Our operating margin is 35%, so our operating profit per hour is about $247. If we have 1 hour less of downtime per year, that's almost $3,000. And if you have 10 practices, that's almost $30,000, $29,610 to be exact. A 10 practice DSO might sell for around 8 times EBITDA. And if you multiply 8 times 29,610, they're leaving almost $250,000 worth of equity on the table at the point of sale. Operatory downtime matters a lot in a DSO because production and profitability far outweigh the difference in sale price of cheap stuff versus more expensive stuff that has greater quality. My suggestion to you is to help your DSO owners track operatory downtime per month and per year. Buy the best quality equipment at the most reasonable price, and most importantly, be a priority for local service. Accentuate your first call fix rate, give a response time guarantee, and make sure you have experienced quality technicians that can repair things on site the first time. So quantifying your value comes back to being 3 different areas that you need to be absolutely indispensable in. One is revenue growth. The second is expense control. And the third is recruiting and development of key talent. In terms of revenue growth, you can help by finding potential practices to acquire that fit their target acquisition profile, or locations where they might want to start up a new practice. Patient marketing, patient engagement, and certainly new patient flow is critically important. And service expansion, where they can grow revenue through additional services they're not currently providing. That could be endo, basic ortho, implants and oral surgery. It could be things like airway management, TMD, and sleep apnea. In terms of expense control, yes, supplies do add up to a lot over time. But inventory control to minimize losses and gaining purchasing efficiencies through formularies, meaning standardizing product offering, are things that every DSO should have in terms of their operating manual. You can play a role in that. And then technical service guarantees that I mentioned before in terms of first call fix rates, response time guarantees, and the like are of critical importance as it relates to keeping a DSO and good operating measure. Finally, sourcing key talent, especially dentists and associates, is going to be something that you can really play the greatest role in. Doctor and staff networking are critically important for you. Training and skill development. Do they have standardized processes for training, retraining, and skill development for new skills? How about management candidate sourcing and leadership, non-clinical components, in other words? All of this means that you need to become a better connector, connecting their problem or situation to the resources that you provide. Finally, I encourage you, implore you, to track your contribution in terms of time and dollar savings in each area of those three that I mentioned, and remind your DSO owners of it at any given and every given opportunity. So as we come to the conclusion of our third webinar, I'll have a couple of thoughts for you. Obviously, the industry has changed a lot from a sales and manufacturing perspective. Being a sales professional in today's DSO world is going to be incredibly challenging. It already is. It's not going to get any easier. We've tried to give you an overview and a framework of the why behind where we are and what you can do about it, but it's up to you to build off that foundation that we've laid. And competing and winning means growing your skills, building your knowledge, and learning from others inside and outside of your industry. Ultimately, what determines your level of success is becoming a better version of you. We wish you all the best and all the future success. Best of luck to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you at some point very soon. So as we come to a conclusion on this initial webinar, how can you stay connected with us? In the deck that you downloaded, and if you keep it in PDF format, you can actually access some of the links on it. If you want to refer a friend or a colleague who might benefit from this webinar, let us know and we'll send them the link. If you want to continue to grow your knowledge of the DSO space, our blog is a great wealth of information and you can subscribe right there. And if you're looking for an industry expert to provide DSO related content, we speak at seminars, trade shows, customer events, study clubs all the time. We can provide content for a remote hosted webinar or a series of them. We can co-author content for a blog, trade publication, white paper, ebook, or otherwise. You can download our speaker and PR packet off your PDF as well. And if you have questions about any material we presented in this webinar or others and want to drop us a line or give us a call, our direct contact information's on the next page. You can send an email to me, DeWalker, or Kevin directly, or feel free to call any of us.